The phone rang at 5:12 a.m., the city still breathing its night, the windows of his penthouse like black screens reflecting the lives of others. "Mr. Carraway? This is Mount Sinai Hospital." The voice on the receiver was formal and sympathetic, almost accountant-like. His father, Leo Carraway, the Iron King of coastal construction contracts, had died of cardiac arrest. It was as if someone had pulled a cord from an empire's outlet. And then a second call, from a lawyer. "Ethan, I'm sorry. But, one more thing, the SEC has issued a search warrant. Today. They're in the lobby." As he listened to the elevators swallow the floors, the word "already" kept pounding in his head. Already in the lobby. Already without his father. Already without the guarantees. Ethan stood among the glass and steel, feeling the money, the friendly hyenas, scatter at the smell of blood. "Don't open the server room without me," he snapped at Miriam, the CFO, to whom he was accustomed to speaking in short, sharp words. "They have a warrant," she replied, looking past him as if past a broken screen. In the waiting room, the agents passed a portrait of Leo with a hunter's smile. "We're here for standard procedure." Standard? They were removing hard drives like doctors rescuing the truth from a coma. The newspapers already knew. At 8 in the morning, the headlines breathed through the cold glass: Carraway Corporation heir under investigation. Patriarch dead. He once again interrupted the calls from his fiancée, Avril, but her silence sounded like a lawyer's protest: no comment. The first brick had already fallen at the funeral. There was something about the rabbi's speech that felt superfluous, the tension of a biography, as if it were being hung in the wind. After the ceremony, Miriam brought him an envelope sealed with a blue wax seal bearing the emblem, the 3 towers he had dreamed about since childhood. "Leo left this for you," he said to open it when things got too much. Ethan tore the wax in the car, where the air conditioner hissed like a snake. Inside was a short note in his father's calligraphic handwriting: "If you're reading this, the game is on. Trust no one, not even me. Start at the East Dock." And the address: an old warehouse on the Brooklyn waterfront, long since decommissioned. Trust no one, not even me. The words ate up the air. He started the engine, and the city moved backward like a film being rewound. When he entered the warehouse, the smell of salt and grease was familiar, like a lullaby made of metal. The flashlight poked out of the darkness a safe on which hung children's keys, the same ones from their house, with the inscriptions: trust, truth, family. Father's joke. But the family key fit. Inside, bundles of papers, old photographs, and a yellow folder with the name Cassandra. On the first sheet, schemes of accounts, signatures, contracts, woven into one skein. Ethan felt his stomach clench into a fist. Under each knot was a surname, his own. Signatures, seals, orders, everything, as if he had been laying the bricks of a conspiracy for years. He did not remember these documents. He did not sign. But paper does not trust memory. "Don't trust anyone, not even me," he repeated, pressing his father's note to his chest. Somewhere in the darkness, water clicked through the pipes like a gunshot. For the first time in years, Ethan allowed himself to sob, short, muffled, like a glitch in the system. And he realized, the life in which he was king had just cashed out. The attempt to put out the fire turned out to be gasoline. "This is a fake," he told his lawyer firmly, laying out the Cassandra documents on the table. "My signature is not like that. Someone else drove with someone else's hand." The lawyer only pushed back his glasses. "The feds think otherwise. They have scanners, courier statements, a bank transfer in Delaware. And all the threads lead to you, Ethan. To you and, to Miriam." Someone in the hallway was already whispering the word, insurance. The news said, schemes. The family chat room was silent. Avril wrote, "I need a break." 3 words louder than a gunshot. His every step turned into a fingerprint in wet cement, clear, heavy, with no right to erase. Former partners picked up the phone and said equally slippery, "We are temporarily suspending cooperation." The office discovered that 3 weeks before Leo's death, the company had signed a series of nonsense charity contracts, huge donations to unknown funds. "Why?" he asked. "To make it look pretty," Miriam replied. Her eyes grew heavy, as if they were filled with debris. When he tried to break through with his words to the press, the editor who had once drunk whiskey with him on the roof of the Standard had put up a seasoned headline, "Son of an empire in the shadow of his fathers." Did he know? Reporters stood outside the office like rooks hearing grain. Comment, they hurled microphones like spears. In prime time, an interview with his own Uncle Ray, the same one who had sat in Leo's shadow for years, swallowing complex decisions with the taste of greenbacks, came out. "My brother was a genius. But it seems the son got lost in the brilliance. I told him to be careful." Ethan felt his face burn from the blow of an unseen fist. "Ray always wanted those chairs," he whispered. "He's not alone," Miriam said coldly. And she opened another folder, emails in which Ray corresponded with a city councilman, the same one who had signed off on Carraway's contracts on bridges and hospitals for years. "A vote on the Blackwood Depot? We'll make a deal." And next to it was a check from a charitable foundation hidden under a different name. "This is your seal," the lawyer showed. "No," Ethan said, but his voice cracked with the consent he wasn't giving. That night he returned to the East Dock, hoping to find something to explain the hypocritical architecture of those signatures. Instead of answers, there was cold air, the creaking of old gates. In the darkness he saw a silhouette, a thin man in a work jacket, with the even movements of a man who had spent his life laying bricks not for a facade but for weight. "Are you looking for the truth, boy?" The voice was like sandpaper. "It's not where the papers are." Ethan stepped forward. "Who are you?" "The one who once lost everything because of your last name." "Worker?" "No." "Accountant?" "Former." The man called himself Salem Rivera, who had once kept the registers of an old steel division that had been closed without warning. "I was written off like a rusty bolt. But before I left, I took a picture of something that doesn't like the light." He showed me his phone. In the gallery were copies of checks, his father's correspondence with a senator's aide, old memoranda marked, "Confidential." Under each photo was a date. Some of these dates coincided with the dates of the donation to children's hospitals. "Milk washes away dirt," Sal said. "And your signature?" He was taught to imitate it. "Ray paid." Miriam didn't always tell the truth. When Ethan got home, the paper had already been stuck on the door, "Asset freeze." In the kitchen, in the darkness, only the refrigerator flickered, a big white lie. Avril hadn't called. Just a text message from the press officer, "Reputational collapse. Management errors must be acknowledged." He sat down on the floor, and the marble gave off a chill as if ice lived beneath it. "What was your plan, Dad?" he asked the void. The answer came from within. Without money he was nothing, but with it he was the one he despised himself for. For the first time, he thought he could lose everything, and for the first time, it felt fair. Sal showed up in the morning, the sun wrapping the city in tin. "Let's go," he said without explanation. They drove through Brooklyn, where bricks remember more than archives. "I was young when Leo came to the steel mill. He loved the power of numbers and hated their arrogance. We closed shops, opened foundations, fed the press stories about scholarships and internships. He knew how to turn pain into PR. But there was one line he wouldn't show anyone, Cassandra." Sal stopped the car outside an abandoned library. Inside, among the dust and maps, they found a safe hidden behind geography panels, America in slices of brown. Opening the safe, Sal pulled out a box of microfilm and an old projector. "Funny, isn't it? You cloud people are losing to a box of glass." The tapes were lectures on financial manipulation, a kind of underground university that Leo seemed to have assembled for a small circle. How to disguise political contributions as charity. How to evaporate responsibility in the supply chain. How to create fictitious sons to sign when the real ones are not yet grown up. The last tape was marked Ray. It showed the younger brother, smiling in a practiced manner, like a man who knows how to be invisible. Your father wanted you to be cleaner than he was. But it didn't work out. They trained you in a different way, Sal said quietly. Why are you helping me? Ethan asked when the projector cleared its throat and fell silent. Sal shrugged. Because I saw you close the contract last year to save 27 hospital beds. It was selfless. Your architecture too, but without a facade. He handed Ethan a flash drive. I'm not a whole dinosaur, with digital copies. Here's the whole of Cassandra. But that's only half. The other half lives where the law doesn't touch. Where? In their heads. In one person's head, Miriam. She's not the enemy. She's a prisoner. Sal said, Miriam had saved the company for years by carpeting the hole, but when Ray offered her a golden parachute, the parachute had hooks on it. She agreed to sign for Leo something that was convenient for drowning with her son. If the king falls, the heir falls. And no one will ask questions about who cut the ropes. Ethan came to Miriam without warning. She sat in an empty office, looking at the bridge that connected the shores, as if reality could be pulled together with cables. Tell me the truth, he said. Whose signatures are these? She was silent for a long time, then put her hands on the table, white as a washcloth. I carried 2 hearts for your father. One loved you. The other obeyed him. Cassandra was his weapon against the future. He thought that if the world turned upside down, he would have proof that you were guilty. He was afraid of your honesty. And Ray was afraid of him. They created an alibi for the Empire, and you were to be the personification of the crime. Why? Because you wanted to build hospitals, not stadiums for the egos of senators. Her voice broke. I signed under dictation. Where are the originals? They're torn. All I have is Ray. And you only have copies. Towards evening Sal brought another piece of knowledge, dirtier than the numbers. Your father not only covered up bribes. He sometimes stopped collapses. He paid for operations for the children of workers when everything was falling apart. He was evil and kind at the same time, like water that drowns and feeds. You must decide what your sentence will be for people, not legends. And then came a revelation that turned everything upside down. On one of the tapes was Leo's voice, not a lecture, but a confession. If Ethan is listening, I chose you as a shield. Because I knew that one day you would break this machine. You are my sentence. Trust no one, not even me, especially me. Ethan took a step back and for the first time felt not hatred but a terrible truth. His father was preparing him for a war in which the enemy was not people, but a system that teaches the rich to be more clever than moral. That same evening he called Avril. She answered. I'm afraid, he said. You've always been afraid to be good when everyone expects you to be strong, she whispered. Choose me or the Empire. I will choose the truth, he said, not knowing if these words were another signature under the verdict. The choice came like a siren, you couldn't miss it. Ray invited him to a private club with interiors where the wood remembered the whispers of conspiracies. Nephew, he said, pouring himself a bourbon, we can close this up nicely. You take the blame for operational negligence. You'll get a fine. I'll run the company temporarily. We'll give it back to you in a year. Avril will be back. The newspapers will forget. Ethan looked at his smooth fingers, fingers that didn't know the red stuff. How much does forgetting cost? He asked. Cheaper than the truth, Ray smiled. The truth is an endless bill. The moment was sticky, like palms after money. And then Ethan did something no one expected him to do. He took out a recorder and put it on the table. Say that again. About, closing up nicely. Ray slowly looked up. Do you think anyone will believe it? You are the signature on your father's sins. Maybe. But I am also his sentence. He went to the feds. Without lawyers, with only Sal's flash drive, his father's note, and his own voice. I am not a hero, he told the investigator, a woman with eyes that had seen wealth turn people into statues. But I have evidence that my company faked political contributions and forged signatures. I am willing to testify publicly if you guarantee immunity for lower-level employees and keep the hospital contracts. Are you bargaining? She asked coldly. I am asking for justice where mercy is usually bought. She stared for a long time, then nodded. Okay. But it will destroy your empire. It is not mine anymore, he replied. At the congressional hearings, he stood under the lamps that turned sweat into truth or fear. Name the names, the committee members demanded. Ray Carraway. Some of Senator Hardy's aides. Maybe my father, too, but he's dead, and I'm not a judge to brand a shadow. The room was as noisy as an ocean. The videotapes that were being played sounded old-fashioned, but every word was thumping now. Sal sat in the second row, his hands clasped together as if in prayer. Miriam came later, stood up, and said, I signed because I thought I was protecting the jobs of hundreds of people. I was weak. I'm willing to testify. She cried without drama, and that cry was more expensive than any contract. When the room was empty, Ethan went out on the steps and saw Avril. So? She asked. You lost everything? Almost, he smiled. But I think I've found something for the first time. What? Myself without a facade. She took his hand, not as a rescue, but as a testimony. At that moment, his phone was buzzing with notifications, the company's stock was falling, partners were withdrawing, lawyers were threatening to sue. He wrote in the corporate chat, we are being reformatted into a public trust. Controlling stakes will go to fund workers' pensions and hospitals. I am stepping down as CEO. A few minutes later, a response came from people he barely knew by name, we will stay. We will leave. We are finally breathing. It was an all-or-nothing moment, and he chose nothing, to get everything he could not buy. That same evening, Ray texted, you betrayed the family. Ethan replied curtly, I betrayed the conspiracy. There was a knock on the door. Sal smiled, now real life begins. It doesn't pay dividends, but it has cleaner air. Ethan nodded. And air is also currency, he said, and for the first time he felt his lungs doing their job without the supervision of fear. Months later, the city learned to pronounce his name without the taint of scandal, but also without reverence. A new word appeared on the sign outside the main office, trust, and beneath it the names of hospitals, pension funds, schools. He walked between the buildings as if between different versions of himself. The post office was littered with suitcases of letters, thanks, curses, advice, threats, the dish of democracy with a metallic taste. He went more often to the East Dock, where the archives were now, open like a window. There, between the shelves, he and Sal would sometimes silently drink cheap coffee and listen to the city speak through the scaffolding. One evening, Miriam arrived, without security, without shadows. I got an offer from another company, she said. They want me to set up compliance and learn moral flexibility. I refused. If you don't mind, I'll stay here, not as a tinker, as someone who takes old mechanisms apart so children won't stick their fingers in them. Stay, he said. There's a lot of glass here and even more trash. We need hands. They smiled at each other, like people who had found their language after the war. Avril turned quietly. She didn't talk about the future, she just flicked on the light switch in his apartment and made tea. Are you happy? She asked. He thought. Happiness is a voice that used to be drowned in the noise. Now I can hear it. But it doesn't always say nice things. They laughed, not at themselves, but at the idea that life had once promised a simple story. At night he dreamed of his father sitting on the edge of the dock and throwing the keys from the children's key chains into the water. Trust, truth, family. I still don't believe you, Ethan said in his sleep. And that's your best faith, Leo replied. The finale wasn't a triumph. It was the silence after the thunder, in which you can hear the footsteps of your own conscience. At the press conference, a journalist asked, "Can you be rich and honest?" He froze for a second. You can be honest, becoming poorer than you wanted. Or rich, poorer in conscience. I chose the former. Will I have the courage to hold this line? Ask me in 10 years. Another journalist blurted out, which is more important, truth or success? Truth is success that doesn't need applause, he replied. And success without truth is applause without music. Can you redeem the past? Came a voice from the back row. Ethan looked at Sal, at Miriam, at Avril. No. But you can pay it forward. Money is a tool, just like fear. I chose a different weapon, shame, which makes you more accurate. As evening fell on the city, he climbed onto the roof of his penthouse. The sails of the billboards trembled like nerves. Far away, the lights flew like airplanes with other people's stories. We are a country where greatness is forgiven and weakness is punished, he thought. And I am weak. And that is why, perhaps, I am finally great. He took out of his pocket a letter from his father, which he had worn down to soft paper over the months, and placed it on the parapet. Trust no one, not even me, it read through the night. I trust those who are ready to lose, he replied in the darkness. And the wind took the paper away, like a message addressed to the stars, where there are no traitors, but there is a temptation to exchange your soul for comfort. He smiled at the sky, not as a winner, but as a man who finally knows how to lose properly. And this evening the city was not against it.